Hi, and welcome back to the Night Sky Knitting Podcast. My name is Rachel, I am your host, and I am a knitter based out of Ottawa, Canada, and this channel is my chatty outlet to talk all things knitting with occasional appearances by other crafts because I need an outlet for such things because I think about knitting as a way to avoid thinking about anything I don't want to think about, and there's a lot of output as a result. So, thank you for joining me. Today is Monday, July 4th, coming out of a long weekend here in Canada. And got a lot to show you and a lot to say. I think, let's say rough outline of this video is I have some summer tops, I have 2 pairs of socks, and then I have a whole boatload of Canadian yarn, just stage right, and I want to show you because it was my birthday. I turned 25 at the beginning of June, a month ago today actually, and I got a lot of stuff. So, welcome. Thanks so much for joining me. I have all my social media and yarn and pattern links in the description box below. So, my very first finished object I actually don't have to show you because it was a gift and it has long been sent to the intended recipient. However, it is the Cinch Me top by Camille Nicolas of camel.knits on Instagram, which I knit in a size 2XL in these yarns. And these are both the Shiny Happy Cotton, which is an Aran/worsted cotton by Wool and the Gang. And this is the color Turquoise Waters, and this is the color Vitamin C. And I will now show you a video of me holding it up way back when, right before I gave it to my friend to give to my other friend who does not live in the city, but who is the intended owner of this. I have knit this pattern before. I knit one for myself last summer in the same yarn, which is one of the only times I've ever knit a pattern in the recommended yarn. I knit it for myself with the cap sleeve option in a color called Eucalyptus Green, and I loved it a whole lot. I wore it a lot last summer. I've been wearing it a lot this spring and summer, and I was working on it when I visited some friends in Montreal, and one of my friends asked for one and said that she would order the yarn, so we looked over yarn options, chose some colors. She chose these two, and like 7 or 8 months later I knit it for her, and it's now off to her. I kind of, I guess, slightly modified this pattern in a couple ways. The first is I did it in Intarsia, but I'm pretty sure one of the testers did it, and that's where my friend and I got the idea to kind of do it split down the middle in the 2 different colors. And this took 4 balls of yarn total, less the amount that you see in front of you, which isn't a ton, but isn't nothing. Sorry, that's not a good description. Oh, I really hope you can't hear my roommate's music. I'm just gonna keep on going. For a 2XL, it took 2 balls of each color. I got 2 balls of the orange and 2 balls of the turquoise. And this is the first time I've ever done Intarsia for a knitting project. I've done it once for crochet, but this was my first knitting Intarsia. And it was fun. It was chill. It was, I think, the most basic Intarsia project you could possibly do, which is just knit half the item in one color, then connect the 2 yarns and then knit the other half, and then just going back and forth, because this top is knit in the round, but it's knit kind of like a cardigan that's not steeked, where you're going like all the way around the whole time, which made it pretty easy for Intarsia, and then you seam up the beginning, at the ending you do this cinch tie detail. I also added an I-cord lining for the neck because it's knit in all stockinette, which means it rolls a lot. And I tried to combat this by crocheting a chain to reinforce that neckline in mine to kind of mixed results. And so, with a year's or almost a year's worth of knitting knowledge since I made mine, I picked up the neckline stitches after everything else was done and then did, I think, like a 3-stitch I-cord, a couple needle sizes down from the recommended. And I'm thrilled with the results, and I would like to, but let's see if I ever actually get around to doing the same thing on mine, because I have some of that green yarn left over. I really liked the effect, and I think it would raise the neckline of that top a little bit more in a way that I would feel more comfortable wearing it kind of out and about. Though I'm not uncomfortable wearing out and about now, I am aware of anytime I bend over, I'm always like, you know, covering my chest just to be safe, and this I think would add a little bit more safety and security. So that is my first finished object. I do recommend it. It's a clear pattern. It is an enjoyable knit if you don't hate purling. I think it's clever and creative, and is a really interesting way to incorporate a big trend from the last year or so, those like cinched Y2K style tops in knitting. I also really enjoy that it's kind of done in a drop shoulder style, which, if you watched my last video, which I'm a little bit sick of drop shoulder in the round garments at this point after about like 3 months solid of working on those kinds of things, but I'll get to that. Because it is that kind of construction, you work the back panel first, and then you pick up for the shoulders, and then you knit down and do increases for that V that you saw. And it moves very quickly at the beginning, which is really enjoyable, at least for me, to kind of give you that satisfaction of clearing certain things from the pattern. And then you have just kind of knitting in the, not knitting in the round, I guess, but knitting the body in that around the, I'm really struggling to figure out how to describe that, but I think you guys get what I mean, for a while. And then it's done, and you just do a little bit of finishing, and bing, bang, boom. You got a tank top or a little shirt, which is nice. My friend says that she really likes the way that it hangs, and that it does cover her bra strap, which was a concern of mine, and so I did shorten that strap bit, the front panels, a little bit, to make sure that the part where it is connected is a little bit higher, because it's kind of a low-cut top to begin with. And then I brought in that I-cord to eliminate any stockinette roll, and then just add like an extra couple centimeters to bring in the neckline a little bit. And she says she likes the way it wears. She has been wearing it, and that makes me really happy. And speaking of little summer tops that I've knit for my friends, the friend who delivered this Cinch Me top to the recipient of the Cinch Me top is the friend who I knit the white tank top for, and that I showed in my last video. And I saw on another friend's Instagram story a photo of her wearing it, and it wasn't even like she took a photo of it saying, "Oh hey, look Rachel, I'm wearing your top," but I actually saw her choosing to wear it out in the wild on somebody else's social media, and that made me really happy, because it's proof that she does actually like it and she does actually wear it. Not that I thought she was lying to me, but it's nice to get reassurance. And it looked really nice on her, so that made me very happy. So that is my first finished object. I recommend it. I also recommend adding the I-cord. I think that is the best way to combat the neck issues. And if you do, issues, it's really a matter of personal preference. But if you don't love a super low cut top, I recommend adding the I-cord to really stabilize it and add some security. The picked up I-cord edge, and also, if you are on the shorter side like me and arguably my friend, pay attention to how long the front panels are before you join in the round, and maybe speed up the rate of increases if it looks like your top's going to end up really low cut like mine was. So that's all I really have to say about that. And I knit it for my friend who has a 48-inch bust line. I knit it for my friend who has a 48-inch bust, and the 2XL fit quite nicely. So there you go. I know that the pattern is graded, I think up until a 5XL, but it was only tested to a 2 or 3XL. But if you have a larger bust size than that and you are interested in this pattern, I think if you contact the designer, you can get the pattern for free, just with the awareness that the math might not work out perfectly because it has not been tested. So that's that on that. My second finished object is what I'm wearing, and that is the As Friends tank by Jessie May of Jessie Made Designs. And I knit this in the Hobby or Hobie Baby Cotton Organic yarn in their eucalyptus color. So I'm going to stand up and show you now what it looks like on me. I'm thrilled, I love it. I think that this is kind of my ideal, perfect, basic tank top for the summer. For those really sweltering days, those days when you kind of don't want to do anything or to wear anything, but you still kind of have to. I think this is it. I finished it yesterday. I've been so excited to talk about this with you guys. I posted about it to my Instagram, and I'm already planning like at least 2 more. The only issue is, and I bet you can guess, you might have been wondering since the beginning of this video, I knit the straps too long and I currently have them bobby pinned in place because it is not my goal in life to be tits out on YouTube. And I fear if I was to record this video without pinning the straps in place, that would end up happening, and no. So that is my one thing. I really should have seen this coming. Like I just said, I'm short, and I should have known not to knit the straps to the recommended length, but I got all in my head that I was knitting them because I would have stopped like 1.5 inches shorter than the pattern recommended, and then I got in my head thinking, no, there's no way that it's that much shorter on you than, it's written in the pattern, and surprise, yes it is. So naturally, and this is not the first time I've had to undo a 3-needle bind off, undo the very carefully woven in yarn into a 3-needle bind off, and frog some part of a strap. But Murphy's Law, whenever I have to do this, it is when I have in fact very carefully woven in the ends, and it is never all the times when I have left the ends unwoven in. The times that I've left the ends unwoven in, just hanging loose, are the times when it fit just fine, which is just one of those things. But yeah, I don't want to have to unpick that and then redo it, but I can't go out with how low it currently is. It's fine if I'm standing or sitting up straight. It's not okay if I slouch even a little bit or bend over, but I mean, for right now, the bobby pin works just fine. And yeah, I might think, looking at it and how much I need to remove, I was thinking about sewing it down, but it would be too bulky and too obvious. And also, like I just said, I am already planning at least 1 more, and that is in my leftover baby cotton organic by Hobby or Hobie. I did a brand partnership with them, and I still don't know how to actually pronounce it. I hear so many people do it either way, and at this point, I don't know who to ask for confirmation. But I have this ball and 19 grams left from the second ball of this and my swatch. I used 80 grams for this, or maybe 81. And I knit this in the size small to fit my bust, which is 34 inches. And this is meant to be a negative ease garment to your preference. And I went down a needle size from a 4, which is the recommended, and that I originally swatched with and loved the fabric for, to a 3.75 because 1 inch into knitting the body of this, after I finished the folded hem, I panicked a little bit and got into my head about the fabric being too translucent and went down a needle size for some security. And looking at this, which has been blocked, and looking at the swatch, can't tell a difference, didn't need to do that. But I'm wondering if I go down a size to the first size, the extra small, which obviously has less of a meterage requirement, and I knit that on the original needle size, which is 4 millimeter, US 6, and because I liked the gauge, and I know that it's opaque enough, but it gives me just like a little bit more of that yarn. And I knit that extra small stitch count up until a couple inches before you bind off. and start doing the shaping for the front and the back. And then I do the increases for my bust. And I knit shorter straps and then have the little bits left over from these two straps that I have to, I have to fix. And I don't do these little back triangles for shaping. I just bind off the back and then knit these straps all the way towards the end. Will I have enough yarn to end up with a second tank top? Maybe. Maybe those changes, going down a size, going up a needle size, shorter straps, no triangle shaping at the back, just here, off. Will that give me the 5 or 6 grams difference that I need to achieve a second one of these tank tops in the same color? I think I'm gonna try it and find out. I know that that's really playing a game of extreme yarn chicken, but I am no stranger to yarn chicken. It is almost my preferred way to operate because you guys know how I feel about scraps. And I have struggled to take this off since finishing it yesterday. I really begrudgingly blocked it, even though I knew that it needed it. I was already in love wearing it. I think that this color really suits me. It's also just kind of my favorite. It's obviously, okay, I did a very in-depth review of this yarn in my Hobby Hobie yarn haul and review video. And I also talked about what I'm gonna make with all the yarns that I received from them, which will maybe kind of give you some insight into the rest of my summer knitting plans. But I talked about how this color appears a lot more blue in person, which I think you can see on camera, than it does on the website. And I think you can kind of get that idea because this is called eucalyptus, but eucalyptus is meant to be, in my opinion, a lot more green. But I love it. I think this is an amazing color for me. And I have enough yarn to almost make a second one. And I can tell that this is going to get worn a ton. And if I can reduce wear and tear, especially in summer when I'm getting a lot of sun, my garments get a lot of friction because I'm walking around and rolling in the park, going to the beach, doing such things, I think it's wise to use the somewhat substantial amount of leftovers I have. No, you can't. It's just out of frame on my little bookcase / mini dresser. I have the swatch and the little bit from the other ball left over. I think it is wise to use the amount that I have left over for something I already know I'm going to get a ton of wear out of and love, which is a second one of these tops. So that is my plan. And you might find me in a couple podcast episodes wearing an identical top to this, except the last 2 inches of one of the straps in the back is like a obviously different color. You will know how that went. I will say I don't think I modified this pattern at all, except I did add a couple inches of length because I know what I like in a tank top, and this tank top is quite cropped, like really cropped in the pattern photos and in the pattern directions, but obviously that is, I think, probably the easiest thing to modify. Just be aware of that if you decide to knit this for yourself. I will also say this is my first time doing this kind of knitted hem, and I really enjoyed it. I think I will start using this kind of technique for any type of folded over neckband that I do in the future. I'm wondering if there's something about this that I'm missing, which is why you don't start with a provisional cast on for double folded collars like as the standard, as the norm, because at this point I've knit like 4 or 5 patterns that have you do a folded over neckband, and it's never something that starts with a provisional cast on the way that it does here, and that just seems so much cleaner and more pleasant and faster than picking up stitches, knitting them together, and then going down from the body. So I will look into that. I'm very grateful to this pattern for showing me how easy a provisional crochet cast on is. Wait, that's not true. I did that with the V-neck and I also loved it. But I'm going to continue doing this, and I think that this folded hem detail is just chef's kiss. I think it's really elegant. I like the change up from rib. I like that this is an all stockinette garment and add some security and some weight to the bottom to avoid flipping up. And I am thrilled. I will also say I think this pattern is a really good dupe for the June top by Petite Knit if you are interested in that, but maybe have some feelings about it only being graded to a 3XL, despite her being like probably the most popular knitting designer and having, it seems, in my opinion, ample resources, experience, and ability to grade those two other sizes on a very basic construction. I really hope I don't upset people by saying that. Petite Knit is also the designer of my hands down favorite sweater ever, the Fortune sweater, so I am still a fan, but I do think that that is kind of a question mark moment for me. I think this is a very similar pattern and a very similar top that would be minimally modified to get the same effect. It's just styled so differently in the pattern photos that I don't know if that went off the same in other people's heads as it did for me, because I was knitting this top at the same time that June top came out. But I think in order to do that, the recommended yarn for this is a sport weight, but you knit on 4mm needles. I think if you just go up to a DK and knit it with a more substantial fabric, like a little bit denser, and then knit it a lot longer, you're gonna end up with basically the same top as the June top, but this is graded much more inclusively. If that is something that, you want to do, you have that information now. But of course, knitting is very personal. That's one of the benefits of it. It's incredibly customizable, and you can knit whatever you want, and I hope you do knit whatever you want. And I will knit another one of these because I love it so, so much. Okay, those are my two finished objects. And now I'm going to tell you a story about how I ended up with 5 whips. Well, okay, one of them, originally this is one of the 5 whips, but I finished it last night, so now it's a finished object, but originally I had 5 whips. So we're gonna rewind the clock once again, like we did in our last podcast episode, to 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago? Yeah, 3 weeks ago. And I had just finished the Cinch Me top that I did in the orange and the turquoise, and the Summer Secret crop that I did in the white Kobu. And I finished a bunch, I finished Frog, I finished a bunch of scrap projects, and I only had on my needles a particular pair of gift socks that I will show you in a second. Friend, you know who you are. Don't watch this. You already chose the pattern. Don't watch. You're gonna spoil. You're gonna receive them in 4 days. Don't watch. Pair of gift socks on the needles. And my field day jacket by Ozetta Knitwear that I'm knitting in Green Mountain Spinnery Weekend Wool. I'll show you a brief cameo now, but I've done literally 1 row of it since I showed this to you guys last week. So this is my field day jacket, in case you didn't watch last episode or you wanted a reminder. I'm very happy that I'm knitting this. I think it's a great pattern. I'm thrilled with my yarn choice, and I'm researching buttons, and I'm trying to will this to completion, but it's honestly just been too hot and too humid to really knit it, because this is Aran weight woolly wool, and it's pretty substantial at this point, and I get too warm. But I had this on the needles, and I had one other very rusticy wool project on the needles. And at the first, I thought, Yahoo, great. I love having, I think 2 is a great number of projects to have on the go. And one was this, a very straightforward knit 1 round, purl 1 round, knit 1 round, purl 1 round, keeping in mind buttonhole placement and this contiguous button band construction to keep things like a little bit more interesting, combined with a lace sock. So I personally like to have a couple things on the go to vary what my mind is doing and what my hands are doing so that I don't injure myself knitting the same yarn and the same weight, the same stitches, and create that kind of repetitive stress injury. And I was happy knitting these two things. And then two things happened. It got really hot really quickly, and all of a sudden, those two really rustic-y woolly projects, the second of which is this pair of socks. This pair of socks, they're the Riverbed socks from 52 Weeks of Socks by Joji Locatelli, which is my first Joji Locatelli pattern. In West Yorkshire Spinners Air Valley DK, which is a superwash DK yarn, but it's really, it doesn't feel like a superwash, like it's very woolly. And honestly, it might not even be a superwash. It might just be a 25-75. I should check. I have the label somewhere, and then I'll put it in the description box. But this really, like, warm and soft in the winter, but in humidity, just brutal yarn to be working with. And my Green Mountain Spinnery Weekend Wool, which is a woolen spun rustic blend of American wools. So not sleek, not smooth, soft when I need it to be soft, but not when I'm knitting it in late June in a very humid climate. And there was this day where it got to like 30 degrees Celsius with the humidity. Basically overnight, it just kind of hit us like a wall. And all of a sudden, I just couldn't be touching these two projects. I couldn't. And combined with that, I have found that purling does my elbows in, which is my big risk for repetitive stress injury and for pain, more so than my elbows, just because turns out I'm always trying to bring my knitting in closer to my chest, and my elbows are at an angle, and it's not good for them. And because I purl with my thumb, I'm a Portuguese purler, it automatically, I'm always bringing them closer. Also, my eyes aren't so good. So again, I bring my knitting closer so I can see what I'm doing. And I appreciate all the suggestions in my previous video on things I can do to combat that, and I'm looking into all of them, and I thank you all. But 3 weeks ago, I did not have your insight and expertise. And so I really couldn't get very far on either one of those things because there was just too much purling, and it was sticky, scratchy, uncomfortable wool, and I wanted to be knitting, but I could not be touching those two projects. So the first thing I did was wind up this skein of yarn that I have been itching to knit with since I received it in December from my mother. And this is Artful Belle sock yarn in the color Bordeaux. It's more purple in person, but I also really like this reddish color that's coming up on screen. Does this help make it more purple? No. Purple? No. It's more purple in person, but it is a purpley red. And this is, I think, an 80/20. This is Artful Belle. Yeah, it's an 80/20 superwash merino nylon. Nope, it's not in the color Bordeaux. It's in the color Cabernet. Wow, it's a really good thing I checked. And what is this base? It doesn't say. My mother got this for me for Christmas, and it is so soft and it is so smooth, and I immediately thought of it as the antidote to those rougher projects. So I wound it up into this cake. I've also been waiting to cast this on because there's just been so many other sock projects occupying my needles, but I was also scared to cast on the project that I wanted to cast on with these, which is the Acorn sock by Amanita Knits, because that's a toe-up sock and I've never done that before, and this is a darker yarn, and for something that I've never done before, I wanted a yarn that was easier to work with in the light, and now that it is summer, it's light till 9 p.m., I can work on this. But I wound this up and I was like, yeah, socks for me. Finally get to use this yarn. It is the thing to be working with in this weather as far as I'm concerned, along with this kind of cotton. But then my better angels kind of kicked in and I realized that I'm knitting my friend for her birthday 2 pairs of socks. She's the friend who got me my 52 Weeks of Socks book, And she's a friend I've only ever made one thing for before. And she's a friend who's very, very knit worthy. And so she asked for 2 pairs of hand knit socks, but more type of house socks or slipper socks than shoe socks. And then when she came to visit for my birthday, she looked through this book and then chose like 15 patterns that she would be happy to receive. And then I'm now knitting 2 of them. But her birthday's next week, and I'm going to Montreal to see her. And I was knitting the riverbed socks for her, which I will go into more detail with soon. But it's all in reverse stockinette, so it was a lot of purling. And I thought I shouldn't be using my needles and occupying my needles trying to get through this time-consuming pattern for myself using techniques that I'd never done before, when I should be working on the second pair of socks for my friend, when I can't be working on the first pair of socks because there's a deadline associated with those. So then I was good, and I wound up and cast on the yarn for the second pair of socks, which I'm knitting her, which are the Raw Honey Rose socks. Gotta double check that. They are indeed the Raw Honey Rose socks by Gina Baglia, also in 52 Weeks of Socks. So I cast those on in the yarn that I got for this purpose. Here's the second sock, work in progress, in the Fiber Company Amble, which I got in Chalk Cliffs like 3 months ago for this purpose. So then I had 3 projects on the needles. But I started going into the office some days, and I went into the office 2 days and then left thoroughly convinced that I needed to knit myself something to wear in the office, because even though it is quite often sweltering outside, it is very air conditioned in there, and even a long sleeve blouse and some slacks were not enough to keep me warm when I'm sitting there sedentary, typing my little emails. So I cast on a wool cotton t-shirt for myself, especially since I had been thinking about this pattern for all of 2022, and I thought, I already have the yarn, I have a purpose for it now, which was my one hesitation before. It's time to do that. But I misunderstood what a saddle shoulder construction was, and I did not realize that it was basically a drop shoulder construction with some fun and funky changes, and that it meant a lot of knitting and purling, knitting flat, up until you join in the underarms. And so that project had to go on hold because purling was aggravating my elbows, and I couldn't do any purl projects. And then I had 2 projects that were knit 1 round, and then purl 1 round, which I was avoiding because the purl rows were aggravating my elbows, and I already had a reverse stockinette, mostly purl pattern on the needles, which was a small sock pattern, this riverbed socks. That was my priority, and I had to work on, and I wanted to finish for my friend because it used stash yarn. It's a great pattern, and the stitch pattern itself is quite fun. It's just also, for me, minorly painful. So I couldn't knit my shirt. I couldn't knit my cardigan. I had to be very careful when I was knitting my riverbed socks. And for my Raw Honey Rose socks, it's a lace pattern with some color work detail at the top. So it was not good TV knitting, and it wasn't good meeting knitting. And I have restless hands. So I cast on a 5th project, which is this As Friends tank that you see before you. So that is kind of the rough order of things I have been working on, and that is the process of how all of them have come into being. And because this top is just stockinette in the round for several inches, with a brief interlude to fold the hem at the bottom, which is a very uncomplicated process, and then a very small amount of shaping, and then straps. This was knit in, I think, a week of meeting and TV knitting. And the thing is TV knitting for me, I can knit lace because I can pause the TV and refer to my book and count my stitches and check, but not when I'm watching my roommate show with my roommates, because I can't pause it and they prefer to have the lights dimmer when we watch TV, which I think is normal. It's just not for me because I'm usually knitting. And I was making mistakes in the lace socks and I didn't want that. And so I knit this. And now I have 4 other things on the needles, which, like, for various reasons are kind of difficult to knit. 2 cause me physical pain. 2 are not seasonably appropriate, and 2 require focus, which I can't do in meetings or while watching Snowpiercer, which is our roommate show. And so there's obviously overlap in different patterns applying to 2 different things. I don't have 6. I know how to count. I know that I have 4, not 6. But that is the story of how we ended up today, and now I will walk you through each of those projects with a little bit more detail. So let's start with the riverbed socks, because the Ozetta cardigan, the field day cardigan, I talked about in the last video, and I have nothing new to say about it, except for I want it to be done because I would like to wear it, but it's also way too hot to wear. So, the riverbed socks. I think this is the thing is if it wasn't, the main issue is purling at a tight gauge does my elbows in. And sock knitting, I have to be careful not to do too much, even though I love socks and knitting socks, because again, it unconsciously, I bring my elbows up close so I can see my knitting, and then that does my elbows in. And this sock is an awful combination of those 2 things. Even though it's a well-written pattern and it's a really fun lace repeat, and I honestly do recommend these socks, it's just I'm knitting these to pattern. I don't think I changed anything except for one mistake that I made in which chart I used, but I'll show you on the other sock because it doesn't have the mistake, and then it makes the mistake pretty easy to spot in the sock. I knit a pair of socks for my grandfather in this yarn last Christmas, and I knit that pair on a 3.25 millimeter needle, and that was perfect. No problems whatsoever. I did a 3x1 rib pattern, and it was, fun and easy. And I do recommend this yarn. But this pattern calls for a 3 millimeter needle. And I cast on with that, and it's just a little bit of a denser sock. And it's just enough of a tighter gauge that it is a little bit more work to knit every stitch. And I think if I could go back in time, I would have started with the 3.25, and I would have 50% less difficulty, but I cannot go back in time. And I do think that the sock that this is making is going to be a wonderful, dense, woolly, warm slipper sock with some ventilation because of this lace, which is down the front and then down the back before the heel, but not down the sole. And then a slip stitch, she'll flap and gusset. And that is this sock. I was having a fine time up until I got to picking up and knitting the gusset decreases. And at that point, it was just far too many purl stitches on the needle and then decreasing in them. It was just kind of a nightmare. And then I think I knit the leg and the heel flap in something like 2.5 days, 2 days, while I was knitting on a couple other things. And then this took me a week and a half because I could not knit it for more than 45 minutes without having to put it down because it was itchy and my elbows hurt. And so when I finished the lace pattern and I did the toe decreases, I just did a little random German short row and knit it inside out so I could knit every stitch instead of purl every stitch, and that gave me just enough relief to get it done quickly, and I plan on doing the same thing for the second sock. The second sock, I am on the gusset decreases now, and it hasn't been as bad because I've preemptively been watching my posture so carefully to make sure that I'm not curling in my elbows and taking breaks even before any pain starts, so it's not an issue. But here you can see the ribbing is supposed to go nicely down into the lace pattern, and it looks gorgeous, this is the pattern that's on the front of the book, oh my goodness, the cover of the book, because it's wonderful. It's so pretty. But when I cast these on, I was reading the chart from left to right because I am a mirror knitter. I'm a left-handed knitter, and that's how I knit. But I was following the instructions for the right sock, but knitting opposite. And it meant that my stitches, they don't really do that on the first one. They don't have that beautiful, you know, following those knit stitches from the rib into the lace, and it bugs me, but I only noticed when I was halfway through the foot, and it had taken me 2 weeks to get through one DK weight sock, and it just was not worth frogging. So I just admire how nice this one looks, and I told my friend, and she's also the one who's receiving this, is also a knitter. She's a crafter. She sews. She's the one who tried to teach me how to sew, and then I mix results. But she understands the time, energy, and money that go into handmade gifts. And I said, the first sock's kind of wonky, and she said, nice, that's how you know it's homemade. And I was like, nice. And that's one of the reasons why she's my friend, because she's an understanding and flexible person. But that's the sock. I have 3 days to finish the foot, and I think I can do it, and I think I can do it without injuring myself. But there's now a bit of a time crunch. Second sock I'm knitting for her, the Raw Honey Rose by Gina Baglia. I have modified significantly compared to the Joji Locatelli Riverbed socks, which I have not modified at all. So the Raw Honey Rose is this pattern here, and as you can see, it has color work at the top, it has some pearl texture ridges, and then it has all over lace. I modified this in a couple ways. The first is I chose a variegated yarn for that color work instead of doing 3-strand color work for this section, because I thought it would have basically the same effect, and I didn't have a second yarn to put in there. And I thought that this was just as nice. Why am I showing you with the half done one? Why don't I just show you on my finished sock? That's what I did here. My second modification is this lace is supposed to go all the way around the sock, and I only did it on the front half, and then I chose plain stockinette for the rest because time was of the essence, and I wanted to make sure that these socks were done as my #1 priority. And I figured this is still enough lace to be beautiful, and that having a plain stockinette bottom would make them a little bit maybe more comfortable. Because it was all over lace in the written pattern, the pattern calls for a short row heel, because I think it would have been truly a feat of mathematics to do gusset decreases in an all over lace pattern. But because I didn't have that issue, I did a heel flap and gusset because they seem to fit better, and I've noticed in a couple of the short row heel socks I've knit people, the first time I try them on, they're going back and tugging them up a little bit, and so if I can avoid it, I would prefer not to give people gifts with short row heels. And I did a garter stitch heel flap and gusset because trying to avoid purling, knit everything. And also because I thought it matched the texture detail up here nicely. And I did not do the garter stitch toe because, again, I was trying to avoid purling as much as possible, which is interesting because purling doesn't bug me for enjoyment reasons. It just bugs me at the wrong gauge. It like physically causes issues, but I don't mind purling. I mind monotony in my knitting, and that's part of the reason why I'm a little bit burnt out on drop shoulder construction right now, because at this point I've done the v-neck, the Bina v-neck, this large jacket, the Ozetta one. That's what I'm gesturing to. You guys can't see that. I don't know what I was thinking. The Cinch Me top for my friend. And then 2 tops for people that involve knitting in the round up until the armpit, but then a substantial amount of flat knitting for the top and back shaping. And I just need a break from knit around, purl around, and I need to give my elbows some time to recover from that a little bit. So those are my gift socks. I have really been enjoying knitting them, except for the purl issue and the slight pressure associated with the time crunch. And I'm really, really happy about this book. I'm really happy that I have it. Grateful that my friend got it for me. And it's been fun to knit her socks from this because she sent me her list of socks that she liked from it. And I thought it was interesting because there was no overlap in our like top 10 or top 15. And even though I think those 2 socks are beautiful, they're just not the kind of thing I would really wear because I like texture in my socks, but I don't really gravitate towards lace socks. And so this allows me to knit them and have the enjoyment of that without, when I otherwise probably those would have been lower on my list of socks to knit for myself. So that's been lovely. And my last work in progress, before I show you the Canadian yarn haul that I have going on, is very small because I cast this on and then very soon after put it on hold because of the aforementioned purl issues and the aforementioned I'm so sick of drop shoulder construction issues. And it is the Riley tee by Rachel Kurihara. If you've watched previous videos such as my Make 9/2022 knitting plans video or my spring summer knitting plans video, this will be familiar to you. It's been on my radar for a long time. But for a while, I was kind of not sure if I would actually end up knitting it because the yarn that I got for it, which is the Green Mountain Spinnery Cotton Comfort DK, which is 20% cotton, 80% wool. It's a woolen spun, all of their yarn is, and this is the color Mint. You can tell I kind of have a theme going. I was wondering if this was going to be still too warm and too rustic for a t-shirt, and I wasn't sure if it was going to, the pattern and the boxy fit of it was going to suit me. And then, like I said, I went into the office for 2 days, and I was cold, and I thought this kind of 80-20 wool cotton blend in a somewhat structured shirt would be perfect to wear to the office because I work in what my boss calls a casual business casual environment. With a smart pair of trousers and a smart pair of shoes, I think the Riley tee would be perfectly appropriate. But I cast it on and then I started and then I read the rest of the instructions and I was like, I can't work on this until my riverbed socks are done because A, I should be prioritizing my gift knits, and B, knit 1 round, purl 1 round. Can't really do it right now. So I have just a little bit to show you, and this is the beginning of the back panel, which is rolling because it's currently just stockinette. But here it is. And it's honestly been pretty enjoyable to knit with. This is a really nice yarn to knit with. It has a little bit of a dry touch, but it glides across my needles, which are wood, very easily, and it's not tight to knit with at all. And I'm excited to have this, and I'm looking forward to spending more time on it once my gifts are done, because I would like to have this done for office days in August, when I can take the bus in slightly cooler morning weather and hopefully not overheat in a mostly wool shirt, and then I'll have that wool to keep me warm in the overly air-conditioned office. So hopefully you'll be seeing more of this soon, but this is my other cast on and my other whip, even if it has been slightly neglected by me. So there you go. And that is everything I have been working on. Now I'm going to try and show you all my acquisitions in a timely manner and hopefully before we lose the light. So let's see if I manage to do that. But like I said, it was my birthday And I'm very lucky to be surrounded by people who know and who are willing to enable my knitting by getting me yarn as most of my gifts. And interestingly, I think as a combination of yarns that I have said in the past I have liked and my friends' values, I ended up with an all Canadian batch, which makes me happy. I like being able to shop Canadian or shop as local as I can. And I've got a lot to show for it, so I should get started. The first thing actually has nothing to do with my birthday. This is the Emily Gillies Luck of the Draw Yarn Club for May on her new base, which is, I think it's Super Sock. Yeah, Super Sock Minis. It's a set of 5 non-repeatable colorways for the month of May that I received, I think at this point, a month and a half ago, but I haven't filmed a podcast where it felt right to show this thematically since then. So I did order this, and I ordered and paid for this over 2 months ago as a congrats on finishing grad school first year to me from me with all my love present, because these colors truly are so me. You guys know that I love greens and blues and grays, and I just could not resist. I was originally going to knit socks, but now I kind of want these to be more visible than that, so I'm wondering if I do like a stripy tank top or a sweater with these as contrast stripes, maybe a Friday tee by Petite Knit in this. But either way, I think I rave about Emily and their yarn every time I film one of these, or almost every other episode, but I truly just, I don't know, like it speaks for itself. I think it's just so lovely, and I'm excited to try the new Super Wash Merino Nylon 75/25 base as opposed to their normal 80 or their previous 80/20 base, and see if I notice a difference and if that makes a difference in my enjoyment of it or how well I wear. So I got that for myself at the end of April, and then was very good and didn't buy any yarn for 6 weeks because I knew I was going to get it for my birthday. And I think we should start with the yarn that my friend who got me, also this book, got me for my birthday, and that is Briggs & Little yarn. I have two skeins of it from my friend, and this is their Tuffy base in the color Rosewood, which is a 2-ply (80/20) yarn, and it's 195 meters or 215 yards for 100 meters. And then this is their Heritage base in the color Rag, which is the exact same meterage, except this is 100% wool, whereas this is 20% nylon in it. And I think they're really, really nice. She got this from some small craft store somewhere in Quebec while on holiday with her partner. And I'm sure my fellow Canadians already know about Briggs & Little, but Briggs & Little is the oldest continuously run mill in Canada. They're based out in the Maritime provinces in a province called New Brunswick, and it's been family owned since I think the 19th century. And a lot of Canadian yarn, like Canadian fiber yarn, is milled there. It's spun there. And I have been dying to go visit this mill because I hear wonderful stories about it, and they have a discounts bin and a seconds bin and all sorts of stuff available, and you get to see it. And I think that's just such a wonderful part of our history in this country. But New Brunswick is not, I mean, you could drive there. A lot of people from where I live go there as a summertime road trip, but that's just not been feasible for me. And I love this idea of a Canadian, and they use all Canadian wools for their yarn. They use a lot of fleece that would have otherwise been discarded because the sheep were grown for meat production, and they use a lot of blends. And it's just the exact kind of thing that I want to support. And it is very rustic wool because they're not necessarily, it's a lot of Dorset and a lot of other blends of breeds of sheep that are not really raised for their fiber, but it's still good, it's still warm, it's still water resistant, and it's still just beautiful. I'm wondering maybe like a colorwork scarf or maybe a rug, because it has, one of them has the nylon content. Oh, and another thing about Briggs & Little is that it's very affordable. I don't know off the top of my head for the prices for these, but in the yarn stores that I have seen Briggs & Little, it's often something like $8 for 100 grams, $8 Canadian for 100 grams of yarn, 100% wool, which is ethically produced. And if you go to their mill, you can get it for much less money as well. So, yay Briggs & Little is such a wonderful gift because I've been wanting to try this for so long, and it reflects some things that I'm trying to move towards in my knitting, and it's so nice. So, thrilled. Thrilled, thrilled. Thank you to my friend. The next yarn that I received as a gift is this Natural You Eco Sock. And Natural You, I've knit one other pair of, I've used them once before. I actually have the socks right here. I knit the Pip and Pin Bear Mountain socks. I think also in their Eco Sock base. No, this is softer, in one of their sock bases, way back in the autumn. This is what it looks like, and that was a really nice experience. And I need to stop talking when I'm out of frame. But Natural You, they used to be based out of Muskoka in Ontario, which is a region, I guess, central Ontario. But they also recently moved out to the Maritimes, which is a collection of provinces where Briggs & Little is also located. And they use all natural dyes, and they use mostly Canadian vendors for their dyes, which I really appreciate. And I think they do make some effort to have some increased sustainability in their yarn. I mean, wool is biodegradable. I'm not going to get into the sustainability of wool right now, but this is an organic merino and a recycled nylon, which makes me very, very happy. And it's naturally dyed, and it is this wonderful browny, purpley, gray gradient, and it makes me very happy. I have told my friends, when in doubt, get me a skein of sock yarn, and I said I really like Natural You, so if you're looking for a gift for me. And my friend delivered. She also got me this little mini skein in a pink of the same base, which is great because I love color work and I love contrast heels and toes, so very, very happy. And I don't know what this colorway is called. I wish that I did, but yeah, you can see naturally dyed yarns made in Canada. I do not think that the fiber is Canadian, but it is certainly still something I'm very, very happy to have and support. And again, I'm trying to work towards focusing more on Canadian or local or ethical and sustainable yarns, but that is such a complicated thing to pursue. And I don't want to be shaming anybody who doesn't want to or can't do that right now. And so I'm not going to get into a whole thing about it, but this is neat and I really like it. And Nathan, my boyfriend, was with me. They're also his friends. And he very quickly was like, oh, I really like that, Rachel. So this might end up being a pair of socks for him because he has not received a pair of socks from me. He's one of the few people who hasn't at this point. And that's really nice. Hi. It's been like a full day since the end of the clip that you've just finished watching, because at about the time where I stopped my recording and I appear before you now, there was all of a sudden just a lot of noise in the background that made it very distracting to hear what I was saying and kind of close off the very end of this video, and I thought it was better if I just re-recorded it. So here I am, July 5th, and I'm here to show you the very last of my yarn haul. The last things I got for my birthday were 2 gift cards to 2 different yarn stores, one from my mother in Toronto, and then one from my university friends who got together and got me a gift card to one of the yarn stores that we have here in the Ottawa Valley called Wabi Sabi, which is in a neighborhood called Hintonburg that I've never been to before, and it's so cute. But you would have seen the outside of this store if you've ever watched any of Selma of Little Big Knits' podcast. It's part of her intro. So they got me a gift card, and I told myself I was going to wait to use it until I wanted a sweater quantity of something. I had a big project in mind. I would wait and peruse their online catalog and do all such things. And then about a week later, I started following Wabi Sabi on Instagram, and they posted about an upcoming indie Canadian yarn dyer trunk show they were having for a dyer called Kat's Riverside Studio Yarns, who is a dyer, or I guess is a indie dyer company based out of Wakefield, Quebec, just not super far from me. And there was a colorway that immediately captured my attention and my eye, and so I laid in wait until the trunk show, and then I hightailed down there, and unfortunately I found it's actually not that difficult for me to get to like I thought at first and hoped. So Wabi Sabi is now very dangerous to me, but I did a little recon mission and I got Frog's eyes from last episode. I got his safety eyes from there, and then I came back a week later for the trunk show. And so that first skein that I got with my gift card, that I ordered online in advance to make sure I would be able to get it because their opening hours are also my work hours, and I wanted to make sure I reserved one for me, is called Hush. I don't know why I showed you the label first to prove that it's called Hush. This is the color, and isn't it just gorgeous? This peachy, pinky, blue, speckled color with like a little bit of depth of gold, of pink. And I got this in their Super Sock Base, which is an 80-20 Superwash Merino Nylon blend. And it's 115 grams for 400 meters, 402. And this, I mean, I really covet these yarns, these really beautiful light pastels. And I saw this and I had the gift card and I knew I could get it, and I felt, it's my birthday, not even spending money, so I bought this and I went to go pick it up that weekend. And I had to peruse the rest of the store, and which I love going to local yarn stores. I've been lucky to have very good experiences in them, but it's so good to be surrounded by people who all speak the same language as you. I get so much from these podcasts and from the interactions I have with you guys in the comments, but it's really nice to kind of show up somewhere and kind of talk shop for a little bit. But I was perusing and I was looking at the other trunk show yarns, and I saw this one from the same base, the 80-20 Merino sock. And it is a little bit bluer in person than it's showing up here. Maybe that's a little bit better. With these wonderful gold, rusty, like bronzed speckles. And this, as you can tell, it came home with me too, and this is in the color Beryl. I know you can also get this at Unit in Toronto and also Yarns Untangled in Toronto. So, highly recommend. And I'm pretty sure that Yarns Untangled had a shipment a little bit before the trunk show. So maybe some of these are left if you're in Toronto, or, both Wabi Sabi and Yarns Untangled ship. But I have one other skein of their yarn that I got for my birthday last year from my boyfriend, and it's a merino single, and I'm so scared of whatever I make with it wearing out quickly when it's such a precious yarn to me that I haven't been able to touch it. But I'm excited for these sock bases because this is going to become a Rivel bralette. I'm hoping that this is close enough to my skin tone that it'll function as a little bit of like a nude bralette that I have a little bit more versatility in wearing it under garments as a bralette than I do my pastel green one. However, I still get a lot of wear out of that. I'm also thinking that this really smooth merino content will be a little bit easier to wear next to skin versus the rustic sock base that I use for my other one. And also I love it. I love that pattern. I love the way it feels. I'm thinking I'm going to go down 2 needle sizes to make it a little bit denser and accommodate for the the stretchy nature of superwash merino, but we'll see. And I've been dying to cast this on, and I've been so antsy to film this podcast so I could show it to you guys in all of its skeined and hanked glory before I wind it up and knit it. I have a few ideas of what to do with my skein of barrel colorway from the 52 Weeks of Socks book, including this one, what is this? 36, which is the Loric, which looks like this, which is a 2x2 rib sock with beautiful cable details. And I think this kind of yarn would really, really shine in that, where you get the beauty of the speckles and the slight variation in color, but it doesn't muddy it. You get to have both the texture and the yarn shine, and also I like a good rib sock. I think they fit well. My one hesitation with that is, I think that yarn is so beautiful, it would work in a lot of things, but the circumference of the sock is, I think right now, too big for me. And reading through the pattern, I don't see how I would be able to easily modify it to bring it down. And I don't think I could go down a needle size to make it fit a little bit better. So that's kind of one hurdle. And any and all recommendations on what to do there are appreciated, but I do know that it's hard without pattern details. I'm also very drawn to the pattern Alvar, which is 27, which looks like this. I really like this kind of geometric look, and I think it would be pretty fun to knit. And I was thinking this barrel is kind of a similar colorway to the base yarn in that pattern, and with, it's a solid-ish color but with a lot of speckles. And then I was thinking maybe one of my Emily C. Gillies skeins would be a nice contrast line going through there. But I also think that if I was to do a contrast, I would want to find a mini that matches this instead. So this will probably end up being that ribbed cabled sock pattern instead. And then we'll see, because I shouldn't need more. I should be able to get 2 pairs of socks out of this. I don't want to, get my hopes up too high because I'm going to be needing this at a tighter gauge, but I am hoping that I might be able to get a ripple bralette out of this and a pair of socks if I use another color for the heels and maybe the toes, because, I have small feet, which is great for being economical with sock knitting, but even if it is a pain to find shoes, but thrilled. And the last hank or skein, the last yarn that I got from Wabi Sabi using the remainder of my gift card, paying the difference, is this skein of Fleece Artist Organic Cottage Sock in the color Fire Opal. And this was the last one, and the barrel I waffled over for a while. Even the hush I kind of waffled over for a while, but I saw this guy hanging and I just took it, and I don't regret it at all. So Organic Cottage Sock is a 80% organic merino, 20% nylon blend, and it is GOTS organic certified, so Global Organic Textile Standard certified. And it is 115 grams for 349 meters. So it is thicker than this guy, despite having very similar fiber content. And you can definitely tell when you hold them up close. And I did compare this to my stash of Patton's Croy sock yarns, which are a thicker sock yarn. And it does seem more similar to that than this in terms of width. And so I'm thinking I might knit these on a 2.5 millimeter needle and have them be just a really thick, cushy cottage sock, honestly. I'm very excited. I really appreciate that this is a certified organic, and I got certified organic merino because GOTS is a pretty reliable eco label, and this is my first time ever trying Fleece Artist, which is a pretty well established Canadian yarn brand based again out of the Maritimes, out of Nova Scotia, out of Halifax, Nova Scotia. They're, from my understanding, and I'm hoping that older knitters, more experienced knitters will maybe be able to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but Fleece Artist was one of the first, at least Canadian brands, that did interesting things with color in terms of yarn and like pushed the industry forward a little bit, or you know, raised the bar a little bit in terms of color, because they recruited and worked with recent graduates from the local arts college. And my understanding is they continue to do so. And so Fleece Artist has, and their sister brand Handmaiden, have a bunch of, I think, repeating colorways, and I think Fire Opal is one of them. I can tell because it has a name. But they do so many limited runs, on non-repeatable colorways, because they're always experimenting and doing new and different things in terms of both base and especially in terms of color, which is why they're called Fleece Artist. I have been wanting to try this brand for a very long time, but it was not really immediately affordable to me, and there's just always there's always something new that I'm coveting. But I'm very happy to have been able to try this, and I did email them, and it's not the majority of their yarns that are also Canadian fiber, but they do work also with some Canadian fibers. This is not one of them though. So that is pretty much my entire haul. I also got a gift card for a yarn store in Toronto called Knit-O-Matic from my mother, and the owner included this little stitch marker. Actually, it's a progress keeper of a crow with my order. Wait, where are you guys? Are you on this side? Yeah. You're on this side. With my order, or my mom's gift card order, because the last time I went in there, I talked to her about bird watching, and she politely nodded, because she has a bird. He's often in store, and I appreciate his presence, and I'm now an amateur bird watcher, and so I thought that was a really sweet touch. And of course, heartfelt thank you to my mother for forever encouraging and enabling this hobby, both by diligently oohing and awing at all of my new projects, but then also helping fund it by getting me a gift card for the yarn store for all gift-giving occasions. So that is my haul and what I plan to use it for. I would like to thank you for being here, especially if you watched all the way to the end. I wish you and yours nothing but health and happiness. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk again soon. Okay, bye.